We're here talking about everyone's favorite character, Mr. Captain Hook. Um, I know how Jonesy feels about this character. He's told me multiple times that he believes that Hook is the best character in the game, just
Yes.
tools wise, what he has access to. Um, yeah, basically, what we're going to be doing is just like first, we're going to do like a general. Here's what Hook has. Here's what he needs to do. Here's what he needs to accomplish. Go over the cards in his deck. Go over some of the heroes, or the most all important hero, Peter Pan, as well. And then we can get into like a little bit of like Q&A, or like we can go over like more strats and stuff like that we can talk about. But yeah, so Captain Hook. First things first, he's my favorite Disney character, favorite Disney villain. His objective is to defeat Peter Pan when Peter Pan is at the Jolly Roger. Couple key things here. First, normally this location, Hangman's Tree, is locked, so we will put the we'll put them over there and act like it's locked. Oh, perfect! I got a locked.
That's what I'm here for. I'm producing the
So,
show, Brian.
what we need to do as Captain Hook, Peter Pan does not start on the board. He starts in the Fate deck. So as we go throughout the game, some of the cards we need to look for to begin to find Peter Pan are Worthy Opponent and Give Him a Scare. So these are two of the three effects in Captain Hook's deck. There are 3 copies of each of these, so 3 copies of Worthy Opponent, 3 copies that Give Him a Scare in the 30-card deck. Basically, we'll go over, I guess, Worthy Opponent first. So Worthy Opponent, this is a card. Obviously, use the play a card action to play this card. Duh. It's 0 cost, so you don't pay anything to play it. One of the big things with this card is that you actually gain money when you play it, so you gain 2 power. So this card is already really good for Hook in that it's a good money-making tool, so that way he's not power-starved. So you gain 2 power, and what you do is you reveal cards from the top of your Fate deck, the 15-card Fate deck, until you reveal a hero. The second you reveal a hero, you have to play it somewhere, and the rest of the cards that get revealed get discarded. So this is a really good milling tool in that what we're doing is we're trying to find Peter Pan, and when we play with the opponent, we're just going to be revealing cards from the top until we get one of the 8 heroes. The second one of them is revealed, whether it's Peter Pan or not, it gets played. The good thing about this, though, is that you get to decide where the card it gets played. So you get to say, I want to play it here, I want to play it there. Whereas if you get faded from your opponent and they get something that's not Peter Pan and it's a hero, they obviously get to play it wherever they want. Yeah, so that's Worthy Opponent. Obviously, again, main thing, you gain money from it, but you have to play a hero you have to play the hero that's revealed, so it does go on your board. We can talk a little bit more about strats and stuff as we get through some of the more of the cards. The next card effect, Give Them a Scare. This can be very much compared to Injustice, I think, from Scar, whereas he looks at the top 2 cards of his Fate deck when he gets faded, the condition. Or it can be compared to the activated ability of Ursula's Crown. Basically, the description, you're looking at the top 2 cards of your Fate deck, so you draw them, you look, they're hidden from your opponent, they're only revealed to you. When you're looking at them, you decide whether you want to discard both of the cards or return the cards to the top of the deck in any order. So unlike Injustice, this isn't a card where you can, look at the cards and put one back and put one and discard one. It's either you discard both or you put both of them back in any order. Key thing here is if you give him a scare and you find Peter, normally what you'd want to do is put him on top, especially if he's with a hero. Not even that, but if he's with another hero, normally you're going to want to put him on top, on the top part. So that way, if you play Worthy Opponent after Peter Pan gets revealed instead of another hero mistakenly, if it's Peter Pan and Taunt or Splitting Headache or a Dust, you should definitely put Peter Pan on bottom. So you should put the item or the effect on top of that. So that way, when you play Worthy Opponent, you're getting rid of either a Splitting Headache, a Taunt, or a Pixie Dust, and you get Peter. Yeah, so those are the two key things that you have as the player to find Peter Pan out of your own Fate deck or pillage through your own Fate deck. There's also another card that I want to talk about. It's one of his conditions. It doesn't pop normally as much, but this card, Obsession, obviously being a condition, it has to be triggered and played on during your opponent's turn. And basically, what needs to happen is that during the opponent's turn, they need to defeat a hero with a strength of 4 or more, and you're able to play this card. And basically, what it is it acts kind of just like Worthy Opponent, except when you get to a hero, you can actually discard it if you want. Yeah, so with Worthy Opponent, obviously you're revealing cards from your Fate deck until you get a hero. You're forced to play that hero. But with Obsession, when this event triggers off, your opponent defeating a hero with a strength of 4 or more, you'll be revealing cards from your Fate deck until you get to a hero, and then you can decide whether you want to play it or discard it. So it's very useful, again, during your opponent's turn. If you haven't found Peter yet, especially, something useful to use if you're still trying to pillage the Fate deck to find him. So those are basically the cards that you have at your disposal as the Hook player to find Peter. And also, I wanted to go over the Fate action really quick and Peter Pan in general while we're on this topic. So Peter Pan's description or ability, I guess you could say, reads this. When Peter Pan is revealed, you must immediately play him to Hangman's Tree, even if it is locked. Any other Fate cards revealed during this action are discarded. So that means during a Fate action, if your opponent fates you, and let's say you get this, your opponent gets this, TikTok and Peter Pan. Peter Pan has to be played. TikTok cannot be played. He must be discarded. So that's kind of one of the cool little caveats of Peter Pan. And I think a reason why a lot of people are could be afraid of this character in general, or could be afraid to fate this character in general, is because there's always the chance that you do get Peter Pan, and the other card that gets revealed with him is basically trashed. Yeah, so that's with finding Peter Pan. So that's part of the objective, is obviously you have to get to Peter Pan. The other main key here is that obviously with Peter Pan, Hangman's Tree starts out locked. So when the game starts, there's a lock token here at Hangman's Tree. You have to find this card in your deck, the Neverland map. It is one card in the 30-card deck. There is no other way to find it than through discarding or just playing the game and playing it out and drawing up. There are no cards in your villain deck that allow you to search for things like items, like Jafar, how he has scrying, where we can play it, pick an ally or item, and reveal cards until he gets one of those, or until he gets that thing, an item or ally. Hook is completely different in that you're literally just searching for it like mad. So obviously, this is a very, very key item, or probably the most important card in his deck that you do get. If you don't play this, obviously, if you don't find Peter Pan, but mostly if you don't play this, there is no path to victory at all. That can be said the same for Peter Pan, but obviously you need to find this and play it. So yeah, with this item, it costs 4 power to play. So it is the most expensive card in Hook's deck with 4 power. So when Neverland map is played, you unlock Hangman's Tree. So that means you take the lock token, move it away from Hangman's Tree. Now Hangman's Tree is accessible throughout the rest of the game. All the actions there as well. And of course, obviously, when Peter Pan is revealed from the Fate deck, he is played to Hangman's Tree. So now you're able to move to begin moving Peter. We'll get to that in a second. With Neverland map as well, it says that when you play an item, so either the next time or when Neverland map is out on the board, when you play an item, you may discard Neverland map instead of paying for the item's cost. So Hook's items, I know 5 of them cost 2 power. So there's 2 copies of Hook's Case, 2 copies of the Cannon, a copy in the Ingenious Device. All of those cost 2 power. The Cutlasses cost 1. So they are a little bit costly, I would say, for Hook, since he does sometimes have a problem with keeping money. So the Neverland map is very useful the next time you want to play an item, especially if it's something like the Ingenious Device or the Cannon. You can discard the Neverland map to play one of those items for free, which is very nice and very good for you as a player to save up some money and save up some power to go towards other things.
Do you mind if I jump in really fast on something, Brian, just to make sure we don't forget this?
Yeah, sure.
Important to note, because I know in our current competitive meta, Jafar's a thing, and I know you will probably talk about him later at some point, maybe in matchups, Brian. But it's important to note that when you're going to use the map to play an item, you actually discard the map before you play the item, so it won't pop off Deception. So as long as there's no other items from like a Wish or maybe another item you've already played, if you only have the map out and you want to play another item to use and you want to use the map is discarded before the other map goes into play, so that won't pop off. So just keep that in mind. I know that's a little deep right now, but just for all of those of you at home listening right now, that's very important, so that way Deception does not trigger in that instance.
Yeah, very true. Glad you mentioned that, Jonesy. Yeah, so basically the map, I guess it acts as payment for that item.
That is correct.
So yeah, once you play the map, it's on the board. Once you want to, if you want to use it to play an item for free, you can. There was a old description of the card where it said the next time you play an item. That is not the case anymore. It's just when you play an item, you can decide whether you want to use the map for it or not. So that's also key to remember as well about the Neverland map. So we've got that. So now we got two things happening. We got the Neverland map. We got Peter on our board. So now, one of the next things that we need to do is Captain Hook. The last thing we need to do is defeat Peter Pan at the Jolly Roger. So now we need to move Peter Pan all the way from Hangman's Tree to the Jolly Roger and vanquish him while he's there. So key thing here as well.
Well, it looks like we just crapped out on TTS. Curse you, Dinglebag! Don't worry. Shouldn't take that long. It'll be the same server, Brian. Hold on.
Okay.
Looks like TTS had one of its fits.
Oh, it did.
There we go. Not here. I'll get it all fixed back up for you. There you go. Peter's there. There you go.
All right. I'm trying to come back. There we go.
I'm on TTS. There you go. That's right, Purple Potato. Talk trash about TTS. I appreciate it. There you go. All right. Yes, next gen gaming, folks. All right, Brian, continue. Sorry about that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how we can get Peter Pan from the Hangman's Tree all the way to the Jolly Roger. So, key action here that we need is we need this action here. Oh, wait. It says I can't interact. What? Did I?
Oh, because you need to choose a player. That's why.
Oh, so. That's why.
Yeah, because you're still gray.
Oh, I'm gray. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm so used to spectating. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the key thing that we need these move a hero actions, which are over here at Hangman's Tree. They look like this little lightning bolt with the arrows on the sides with what looks to be like a little phone or something, but with a lightning bolt in it. So this allows us to move a hero one space to an adjacent location. So typically what we do, right? First basic thing moving Pan is coming to Hangman's Tree and moving it. One space, right? That does take a little bit, though. That would mean that you would have to come somewhere else, play out another turn, then come back to Hangman's Tree and move him again. Luckily, Captain Hook has some items and an ally at his disposal that are able to help him get Pan to the Jolly Roger even faster. The first thing we'll talk about is the Ingenious Device, this item. All right, so this item. Also, fun fact, Hook and Pete, I believe, are the only characters that have cards that grant extra actions.
That is correct.
Yes, I believe so.
At least in Disney.
Yeah, say at least in Disney. Someone can correct us in chat if they'd like, but I believe it's only Hook and Pete.
I believe that is correct.
Extra actions.
Yes.
So, this item, the Ingenious Device, what it says, Obviously has this cool little card out with the bomb, but it says that this location gains the move a hero action. So that means wherever I play it, let's say I play it to Mermaid Lagoon, this means I'm going to be able to, when I come here, gain 3 power. Obviously, when it's not covered, I'll be able to gain 3 power, play 2 cards, move an item or an ally to an adjacent location, and move a hero to an adjacent location. Yeah, so 5 actions. That is huge. So like we were saying, the Ingenious Device, it grants a move a hero action. So it grants an extra move for Peter Pan. A lot of times, stuff that we normally see with Hook is that the Ingenious Device will be played to Hangman's Tree to actually grant 2 moves rather than the one that is at Hangman's Tree. Also, it can be useful too if there's another hero here. You can move both of the heroes, so one for Pan, one for the Lost Boys, to get the Fate and the 2 power action uncovered as well. But that is the Ingenious Device. The other tool that can be used for moving Pan or really any heroes is the ally Mr. Starkey. Got some really cool art here on Starkey, ganging up on Mr. Smee. He's one of the illustrious members of Hook's crew. Basically, what he is, Mr. Starkey, costs 2. He's 2 strength, but when he is played, you may move a hero from his location to an adjacent unlocked location. So that means, let's say we don't even have the device in play. Come over to Hangman's Mermaid Lagoon. Let's say you're going to play some stuff, maybe like an ally. Then you play Starkey, and that moves Pan over to Mermaid Lagoon. Or you could even go nuts and say, "Oh, hey, I have both of these cards in my hand at this point." And let's say you were here, right? Oh wait, no, not even there. Let's say you're going to Mermaid Lagoon. You could do the 2 card plays and say, "Okay, I'm going to play the Ingenious Device." We also have the map here, so you can play it for free. That moves Pan 1, and then you can pay 2 for Mr. Starkey, put him at Mermaid Lagoon, then move Pan over again, and now you have your move an ally or item action open. So the move an ally or item action that moves an ally or item in adjacent space open. This can be used to move Mr. Starkey to Skull Rock, so that way he can be added to the number of strength that you have at the Jolly Roger to vanquish Pan eventually. So really cool stuff too you can do with Mr. Starkey and the Ingenious Device. As far as moving Peter Pan over, those are the only tools that you have. So the Ingenious Device, Mr. Starkey, and the move a hero action at Hangman's Tree. Yeah. So last thing, say we are over here. We got Peter Pan at the Jolly Roger already. Once we've already got Mr. Starkey at the Jolly Roger because he helped us move Pan over and we got him over there. Let's say we've got our friend Mr. Smee here and we've got a boarding party out. So now, in this situation, we are ready to defeat Peter Pan. Now, obviously, this is super vanilla. He doesn't have any buffs or anything. This is literally just straight up just painting a picture of how this is supposed to go. So Peter Pan is at the Jolly Roger ready to be vanquished. Now we can vanquish him. There are multiple ways. Well, there are 2 ways to do this. The first way is to actually go to the Jolly Roger and just finish the job there. There's an Yzma pun.
On 1. Put it on the counter, everybody. Put it on the counter.
So you can come over to the Jolly Roger and use the vanquish action from the Jolly Roger to vanquish Peter Pan. He's at 8 strength. Starkey is 2. Smee is technically 4 because he gains +2 strength if he is at the Jolly Roger. That's one of his cool little abilities. And the boarding party, although they are not at the Jolly Roger, but much like the Wolf Archers in Prince John's villain deck, if you guys are familiar with Prince John, the boarding party can attack heroes at adjacent locations, including their own. So technically, the boarding party actually covers 3 locations when they're at Skull Rock. Jolly Roger, Skull Rock, and Mermaid Lagoon. They're at Mermaid Lagoon. They cover Skull Rock, Mermaid Lagoon, and Hangman's Tree. They are 2 strength, but they're really useful to help spread out some damage. So this is one way to defeat Pan. He's at 8 strength. We got 8 strength at the Jolly Roger. Defeat Pan, boom, you win. That's one way. The other way is with this very, very good item, one of my favorite items, I think, in the game, the cannon, which grants an extra vanquish action to any location. So much like the Ingenious Device, how it grants a move a hero action to any location. The cannons, there are 2 of them also. There's not only one, there are 2 copies of cannon in the 30 card villain deck. These cards grant a vanquish action to a location. So when you add it to places like Skull Rock, not only can you gain 1, play a card, fate, and discard, but you can also vanquish a hero from this spot as well, if you have enough strength to do it at the hero's location. Same goes with Mermaid Lagoon. You can do the whole big gain 3, play 2 cards, move an ally or item, and then have the vanquish action here as well, and then vanquish a hero from here from Mermaid Lagoon. And yes, this can be used to vanquish Peter Pan. Captain Hook's objective is simply to defeat Peter Pan while he is at the Jolly Roger. It is not Peter Pan has to be defeated from the Jolly Roger or from and at the Jolly Roger. So that doesn't mean that Captain Hook has to be at the Jolly Roger when it happens. It just means you need to use a vanquish action to defeat Peter Pan. And we get that with the cannons. Along with that, from Mermaid Lagoon, a cool thing too, a pretty easy way to sneak out a win is that you also have the move an ally or item action up here as well available. So you're actually able to move a cannon if you already have one out at Skull Rock or the Hangman's Tree. You can move it over to actually do a vanquish action and sneak out a win there as well. So those are the 2 ways that you can vanquish Peter Pan. Obviously, the vanquish action at the Jolly Roger and the vanquish action with the cannons. So that is basically Hook's game, what he has to do. So we can go over that again. First things first, we need to find Peter Pan. We do that by playing our worthy opponent cards, our give him a scare cards, or by triggering Obsession to pillage through our fate deck and get closer to Peter. That's how we do it. Also, the way the game works naturally, if you're being fated before Pan is even on the board, naturally the fate deck is shrinking to either get to Pan sooner or the opponent might just pull him out for you. Who knows? Other thing we need to do is find the Neverland map in our 30 card deck. Again, there is only 1 copy of it in this deck. There are no items, there are no effects, there are no allies that allow us to pillage through our villain deck to search for this. The only way that we're able to search for this is by playing cards and discarding throughout the game and hoping we get the luck of the draw and get it on the next draw. After that, we've got to defeat Peter Pan at the Jolly Roger. So Neverland map gets played. The Hangman's Tree becomes unlocked. Peter Pan is already out. Now we can move him over. Get him over there. Let's say I'm here. I got Starkey. Oh, he's over there. Now we got Mr. Starkey over here. I'm going to play Smee as well for my second card play. And guess what? I have like 6 power, so I'm going to play a Pirate Brute. And now I can vanquish Peter Pan from the Jolly Roger. Or I can vanquish him from Skull Rock if I wanted to. I can do the same thing. Come over here, play a card, cannon, etc. It's basically all that has to happen for Captain Hook to obtain victory. Easy, right?
You make it look easy, I'll tell you that much.
No, no, not as easy as it seems. So, really quick, before we get into the actual villain cards, I do want to get into the pesky heroes and the items and effects in Hook's Fate deck that can actually cause a scene and begin to make things a lot more difficult for him. The first hero that we will go over is our beloved friend, Mr. Crocodile, TikTok. If you guys have not seen Peter Pan yet, if you've never seen this movie, highly suggest you get the free trial of Disney Plus or boot up your Disney Plus and watch this. TikTok is Captain Hook's probably his second worst enemy other than Peter Pan. The whole shtick is that Peter Pan and Captain Hook were once in a fight, and Peter Pan eventually led TikTok to bite Captain Hook's left hand, hence why he is called Captain Hook. He has a hook on his left hand that replaces his hand. So TikTok is extremely scary in this game as well. So TikTok, he is a 5 strength hero. That is the buffest hero in Captain Hook's Fate deck besides Peter Pan. And his ability is that if Captain Hook moves to TikTok's location, Hook must immediately discard his entire hand. So that means that if TikTok is out on the board and I want to come here, my hand would have to be immediately discarded. No questions asked. So if he is here, you can come here if you're okay with getting rid of your entire hand and doing everything else. Because at Primary Lagoon, obviously your only option here is to gain 3 power because you can't play any cards because you won't have any cards to play. With him at Skull Rock, obviously the discarding is taken care of for you. You get the option to Fate. With the Jolly Roger, you will only be able to access the Vanquish action, seeing as obviously play a card cannot be done if you move to TikTok's location. So TikTok, obviously being very annoying in that, making it very pesky. Obviously, if to force Captain Hook to discard his entire hand if he has important cards, like let's say the Worthy Opponents, or the Give Him a Scares, the Ingenious Device, and of course, I would say the Neverland Map. Those are probably the top 4 cards that I've seen. If those are in my hand, I'm not going to go to TikTok's location because I don't want to get rid of them necessarily. Although there are 3 copies of Worthy Opponent and Give Him a Scare, typically you might find yourself in a situation where you do need these cards very badly throughout the game. So that's where TikTok can come in and just ruin the fun and ruin the game. So that is our good friend TikTok.
Boo, the crocodile. Also, I love him.
All right. Next card are Peter Pan's Lost Boys. In a sense, this is Peter Pan's crew. So much like how Captain Hook has his pirate crew and crew of lackeys or men aboard his ship, the Lost Boys are essentially Peter Pan's lackeys. They're all grouped together, so we don't have individual Lost Boys as heroes, but they're all just generalized into one hero. The Lost Boys, though, they are also pretty strong as well. They are 4 strength, and their effect or ability is that when you perform a Vanquish action to defeat the Lost Boys, at least 2 allies must be used. So that means when you vanquish the Lost Boys, you have to use 2 allies. They are 4 strength. So with this example, let's say you've got a Swashbuckler at a Lost Boys location. You cannot defeat the Lost Boys with, or Pirate Brute, excuse me. You cannot defeat the Lost Boys with the Pirate Brute. Although his strength matches to the Lost Boys' strength, the Pirate Brute is only 1 ally. So you have to use 2 allies to defeat them. So if you want to defeat him with the Pirate Brute, you got to use something else. You might have to go for a little bit of an overkill, like a 4 and a 2 situations, like 6 strength towards the Lost Boys if you want to get rid of them with one of the Pirate Brutes. Yeah, obviously these guys are very useful. 4 strength, using 2 allies. Hook does have 10 allies in his deck. So obviously using 2 of them, you are kind of dwindling down on your allies if you do want to vanquish the Lost Boys with your allies. Those are the Lost Boys. Now we'll get into more of kind of the mainline cast, I would say, of Peter Pan. We will first start with good old Wendy Darling. Oh, so Wendy Darling, so innocent, so sweet.
She also sells cheeseburgers on her spare time.
Yes, that's true.
That's very true. She runs a very famous restaurant establishment.
Yeah, so if you go to Wendy's, this is her. No cap. Yeah, so Wendy. Wendy is pretty strong in her own right, not just herself. 3 strength is not terribly strong, but her ability makes her a little bit stronger in that when she is put on the board, all the other heroes in Captain Hook's realm get +1 strength. So that means when Wendy is on the board and Peter Pan is there, Peter Pan is now 9 strength instead of 8 in this situation. Also with TikTok. TikTok is not 5 strength anymore. He is 6. And go on and on. The Lost Boys are not 4 strength anymore. They are 5. You guys get the gist. So Wendy, much like Alanadale from Prince John's Fate deck, I'm sure you guys have comparisons as well. I'm just trying to spitball. Alanadale, who else, Jonesy? Can you think of anyone else that grants a buff? Top of your head? Anybody? He might have went somewhere. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Anyway, yeah. So with Wendy, she grants a +1 strength to all of the allies or all the heroes that are in the realm. Next hero we'll go over. I'll make sure I'm kind of sitting here on Jonesy's end so that way I'm not going crazy. We'll talk about our friend Michael. So I'll get a little bit more descriptive here. So Michael, he is a very puny hero on the surface. He is a 1 strength hero. 1 strength, much like Ray. I think Ray is 1 strength.
That's correct.
Yeah, there you go. You're back. Perfect. All right, awesome.
I had to use the facility.
So, perfect. Okay, so yeah, Michael is 1 strength, but I like to call him not 1. I like to call him 2 strength because technically he's not 1 strength at all. So his ability is that Michael gets +1 strength for each location in Captain Hook's realm that has a hero, including Michael's location or his own location. So that means that technically he is a 2 strength hero, just straight up. I don't know why he's marked as 1 strength. It's kind of silly, but I guess he's like the youngest. He's like a baby. Well, I don't think he's a baby. I think he's like, I don't know how old he is, but he's
like
very
a
young.
toddler, or like a little old, younger or older than a toddler. I think.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. So he's a little bit older than a toddler. So I guess that's why.
Lore minute with Brian right here on the characters of Peter Pan.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michael, he has the potential to actually get extremely buff. So yeah, like we were saying, on the surface, if he's played with no other heroes, he is 2 strength. But also a key thing to remember, if Peter Pan is on the board, folks, and Hangman's Tree is still locked, Michael still gets the buff for Peter Pan being on the board at Hangman's Tree. So that would move Michael to 3 strength instead of 2. Hope everyone understands that. Peter Pan at locked Hangman's Tree still applies to Michael being on the board.
Yeah,
also,
and the reason for that is because the lock token specifically, folks, it's only just canceling any interaction that the players can interact with that space. So even though Peter Pan is here, he can still trigger other abilities. Just the lock location makes it so you can't like take particular actions or play cards there, stuff like that. So that's why.
So technically, the most buff that Michael can get, just on the surface, is obviously 4. With everyone out, so 1, 2. Well, no, it would be 5. So 2, 3, 4, 5. He would be at 5 strength if every single location has a hero.
It's a buff boy.
Now we can get into dusts and such. Also, Wendy. If Wendy's on the board, he would be 6. Even obviously, if Wendy was here by herself covering, this would be a 2 strength buff. So this would be 6 instead of 5 because Wendy. We can get into the Pixie Dust and such in a little bit. That's a rabbit hole that is very frightening to talk about. But yeah, that's basically Michael. He's very weak on the surface, but he gets really buff the more heroes get added to the realm and the more those heroes are actually spread out throughout the realm. So that is our friend Michael. We'll now go to John, the man with the top hat, glasses, and umbrella guy. This guy, pretty unique as well. We can get a little bit more talking to strategy there as well on his end. He is a 2 strength hero, but his ability is that he gets +1 strength if he has any items attached to him. So that means the second an item gets attached to him, he gets a +1 buff. This does not mean he gets a +1 buff if there are multiple items on him. So let's do a little thing. So, John, with a Pixie Dust. So the Pixie Dust grants +2 strength. So that would put him at 4. Plus his buff that there is an item now attached to him. This would put him at 5. So John gets +1 if any items are attached to him. So he gets +1 for the dust. That's 3. Gets +2 because of the dust. That is 5. Let's say I put a taunt on him. He is still at 5. The taunt does not grant an extra addition of strength. This wording would be John gets +1 strength equal to the amount of items he has on him or for every item attached to him. It's just for any. So if he has any items attached to him, he gets a +1 buff. It doesn't matter if it's 1 item. It doesn't matter if it's 4 of them. He will only be +1 if there are any items attached to him. So yeah, that is John. He can be very pesky in that. He can get pretty strong as well. Not as easily as I would say Michael or obviously TikTok or Lost Boys on the surface. But if he's on the board for long enough and if RNG wishes, he can get very buff. Last hero that we want to talk about. This hero can be extremely annoying, extremely situational as well. So this is the most situational hero, I think, maybe besides TikTok. They might tie, but I think Tinkerbell actually beats out TikTok in this situation for most situational hero in the Fate deck. Tinkerbell, she's only 2 strength, but when she is played, the opponent or you may discard 1 ally from her location. So your opponent fates you, they get Tinkerbell. They don't get Pan. Let's say Pan's already on the board, right? Or let's say, better yet, Pan is here, and we're just loaded, right? We're just like, you know what? Yeah, we got the Smee, we got Pirate Brood, we got 8v8 ready to go. I'm going to go vanquish him next turn. Here comes the fate from my opponent, and we get Tinkerbell. So Tinkerbell, obviously, you may discard an ally from her location. The opponent's going to play her at the Jolly Roger. Get one of these bad boys. Get rid of Smee. All of a sudden, my strength towards Peter Pan has just been decreased by 4. Right? So now, Smee's off the board. It goes from 8 to 4. Tinkerbell has done a whole heck of a lot in that scenario. Quick little tidbit about Tinkerbell as well. If, let's say, you're playing Worthy Opponent, you've played Worthy Opponent, and you pull out Tinkerbell. And let's say we're in the same exact situation. Maybe not the same exact one, but maybe let's say we haven't found Peter yet. He's not even here. Let's say we have some allies out, and we got Tinkerbell. So we got Tinkerbell with Worthy Opponent. Obviously, we have to play her. Let's say we want to play her to the Jolly Roger. In this situation, you don't have to discard any allies from the Jolly Roger because of the beautiful wording of her card, including the word may. This, in this case, means that us as the player, we don't have to trigger off her ability in this case. And obviously may, being that the opponent obviously has the option as well to not trigger off the ability. But 100 times out of 100, they are going to trigger off the ability. There's an item on the board. Just like, I guess, discarding the map. I've never once seen someone discard the map. It's much just like that. 100 times out of 100, no one ever discards the map. Just like 100 times out of 100, no one ever plays Tinkerbell and ignores her ability, especially if it can be performed. But yeah, with a Worthy Opponent, if you do it and you get Tinkerbell, you can put her anywhere and you don't have to abide by her ability in this case. Obviously, with everyone else, you have to abide by their abilities. You can't just say, oh, TikTok to be played, I'm just going to ignore him. because I played him. Nope. TikTok's ability is stagnant. Tinkerbell's ability is a one-off. Yeah, so with Worthy Opponent, you don't have to abide by Tinkerbell's pesky ability. Yeah, so those are the other heroes in Captain Hook's Fate deck. There are 7 of them. 7 heroes. So 8 heroes, including Pan. 7 others. Peter Pan, TikTok, 2 Lost Boys, Tinkerbell, Wendy, Michael, John. Yes, sir. A lot of heroes. A lot of heroes. All right. We're going to delve real quick into the effects as well, because these things can really hinder your goal. These things really begin to hinder or stop you from getting to Peter Pan. Getting to defeat Peter Pan. We will start with Pixie Dust first. So good old friends of Pixie Dust. Multiple copies in here, much like Steal from the Rich. 3 copies of that. 3 copies of Beware the Groove. You know, like multiple copy cards, like Sabotage, although there aren't 3 copies of that. Once Upon a Dream, things like that. These are multiple copy cards, 3 of them in the 15-card Fate deck. These are items, so they do get attached to heroes. So when Pixie Dust is played attached to a hero, that hero gets +2 strength. So that means the hero will be slapped with an item. The Pixie Dust, they get +2 strength. Captain Hook has no way of removing items off of heroes. There's no way Captain Hook can remove an item off of a hero other than vanquishing. That is key to remember. There is no way to get rid of the... Captain Hook has no way to take these items off of heroes other than by way of vanquishing. So these are good, obviously, to put buffs onto Peter Pan. Obviously, if you're like, hey, I got a dust, I want to buff up Peter a little bit, he goes from 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 14. 15 with Wendy on the board. That is the max amount of strength that Peter Pan can get to is 15. Right? Yes, 15 strength.
Yes, that is correct.
All 3 Pixie Dust, Peter Pan, Wendy, that's 15. That's 1 buff boy. That's a lot of dust.
That is one strong jar of peanut butter right there. Let me tell you.
Yes, what am I going to say? That's a lot of fun dip.
That's a lot of fun dip.
Yeah.
I don't know the reference on that one. I'm going to pretend.
Okay. Maybe someone knows what fun dip is at movie theaters, or the actual Pixie Dust.
I know what fun dip is, but I don't know the correct correlation with that.
I don't know. Never mind. You know what? Never mind.
You know what? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
Make the fun dip reference.
Yeah. You know what? Fine. It's fine. It didn't go well. Great. Those are Pixie Dust. Easy. All right. Next thing. An effect. Splitting Headache. Obviously, these effects don't get played on the board. They are things that are like, hey, this is just going to happen. So the effect, you can choose to discard an item from Captain Hook's realm, much like the items that we have that are very important to him, like the Ingenious Device or the Cannon, for example, or even the Neverland map, to say, I don't want you to get that discount, or we're going to get rid of this, and it's not going to be on the board anymore. This is pretty damaging to Captain Hook in that whatever item you discard, Captain Hook has no way to get that item back. Of course, unless you discard a cannon, there is a second copy of it. With the Ingenious Device, obviously, if this gets discarded, you have to get it back on the you would have to get it back on the reshuffle of the deck. There are no ways for Captain Hook to fish items out of his discard pile, or his deck. So Splitting Headache is very good with that as well. I won't get into like the stupid strats yet, or like the really unfortunate things that could happen. We'll get to that in a little bit. We're just still sticking very general. Last big card in Captain Hook's deck, one of the biggest ones, is Taunt. 2 copies of this in the 15-card Fate deck. These cards are lifesavers almost for the opposing player. So Taunt, when Taunt is played, attach it to a hero. Captain Hook must defeat heroes with Taunt before defeating other heroes. So that means if I've got Peter Pan on my board and I'm sitting here like, oh baby, look at all this stuff. Look at this board. It's like Christmas. Oh my gosh, look at this strength. And maybe you've just been ignoring TikTok the entire game. And he is sitting over at Hangman's Tree. Everybody wave to TikTok. I want to see little hands or wave. Just type wave in the chat. I don't know. Do whatever. Yeah, wave to TikTok. Now, all of a sudden, boom, your opponent fates you, gets this card. Taunt, I'm just going to slap that on TikTok. This means I can't defeat Peter Pan and win the game until I defeat TikTok. So this can set back Captain Hook like almost miles of saying, hey, I got to do this now. I got to get here. I got to find ways to defeat TikTok. And of course, this is if the board state is set like this. I know everyone in the chat's going to be like, oh, but what if you have this? Or what if you have that? What if you... we'll get there. We'll get there, folks. But this is obviously just right now what the board looks like. This is what Taunt should definitely be used for. Taunt anything that's not Pan. Stop the bleeding. Stop the pain. Just taunt stuff and stop the progress, because this is going to hinder Captain Hook from winning faster, is by putting taunts onto other heroes. So taunt cannot be played. Obviously, you don't want to double taunt a hero. This is not clever disguise or some type of bow and arrow thing or Rafiki stick, I guess you could say. Double taunting a hero is kind of weird. Only way you'd want, I think the only reason you want to do that is if you wouldn't want to taunt Peter Pan. We'll get there.
But we'll get there.
But yeah, so, and obviously taunt, what's very unique about it as well is that it's not like prophecy in Scar's deck, where there are no other items attached to him and you can put this on here. Taunt is an item you can put on. This doesn't. Pixie Dust can go on taunted heroes like wildfire. You can dust the taunted hero. You can taunt the dusted hero. You can really stop him at that point. Woo, imagine that. 9 strength, TikTok. Oh.
It's a fun time.
Boy. Oh, boy. That's fun. That's fun. Yeah. So, taunt, very scary. Obviously, if you're playing Captain Hook, avoid this at all freaking costs. That's all I gotta really say. Try and avoid this with your life, because these will only slow you down. There are 2 copies in the deck, and obviously, if you are playing cards like Worthy Opponent and not defeating the heroes that come out, the taunts and the dusts are way more likely to be put on those heroes, especially the taunts. Great. I think those are the Fate deck cards.
And just to clarify, just because this has happened recently and I was in pain, one thing to note about Taunt, you want to make sure that there is a hero out on the board, because for whatever godforsaken reason, if you pull out Splitting Headache and Taunt and there's no other hero besides Pan out there, and this is unlocked, so you can interact with this, and there's no items.
And there's no items.
Pan is taunted, and you now cry. So
yes.
Make sure you're fading Captain Hook, because you want to get those heroes out on the board. So, because the only way Taunt can be played is if a hero already exists. Now, granted, this situation is going to be a very rare circumstance, but it still does, it exemplifies the idea of make sure you still fade Captain Hook to get the heroes out on the board so you can start using stuff like Taunt. Waiting until the last minute, and I know Brian will probably talk about this, that you're going to lose your chances to do that.
Yes, most definitely. All right. Those are the heroes. And the Fate deck. That's the Fate deck.
It's a deck of fates.
We'll do a brief little quick synopsis, I guess you could say, of the rest of the cards in the villain deck. But mostly, we can also get into strategy after this, but we'll go over the other cards in the villain deck. So I already know about Give Him a Scare, Neverland Map, or the opponent. We will talk about the allies, and we will start with the most simple ally, the Swashbuckler. So, nothing to it. These guys cost 1 power. They're cheap. They're also kind of weak, but they're 2 strength at least. So, they can vanquish really most things. So, they can vanquish Michael when he's on his own. They can vanquish John when he's on his own. They can vanquish Tinkerbell when she's on her own. 3 copies of Swashbuckler in here. So, you got 3 of that. That's 6 strength right there. We'll go over to the boarding parties. We already kind of went over these guys as well. Very, very, very good ally. Probably, in my opinion, the best ally in the deck, I would say. Maybe besides, like, Starkey. but boarding party, in my opinion, is the best ally Captain Hook has. Easy. Because although they do cost 2 power instead of 1, like the Swashbucklers, their ability is extremely, extremely good, especially when Hangman's Tree is still locked. Oh God, I need it.
TTS. TTS,
I need to
everybody.
lock. I just need to lock the board. There we go. Okay, so got my boarding party. Simple. You get boarding party. Where do you want to play them? Skull Rock. Easy. Easy peasy. Play into Skull Rock. And this is obviously when the tree is locked. This, for reasons, is because you have obviously you really have the boarding party is going to cover every accessible location. In the realm, Jolly Roger, Skull Rock, and Memory Lagoon. Their strength is going to spread all across these 3 locations. When Hangman's Tree is unlocked, it could be useful to put a boarding party, to have some boarding party maybe at Mermaid Lagoon, in case there are pesky heroes over here at Hangman's Tree that look like they could be taunted, especially. Kind of like the scenario I showed you guys earlier with Taunt. Boarding party, that's why they can be pretty useful to put here as well at Mermaid Lagoon. So that way their strength spreads from Skull Rock, Mermaid Lagoon, and Hangman's Tree. Because again, they can attack adjacently. So, not only adjacently, they can attack at their location, and adjacently. So 3 copies in there, that's 6 strength. That's 12. 6 with the Swashbucklers, 6 with the boarding party. Now we're going to go over to our good friends, the Pirate Brutes. These boys are dummy strong, but dummy costly, dummy expensive. We're talking 3 power. These guys are pretty expensive, but they are 4 strength. Big boys. So these guys are really good to use against things like TikTok. Obviously TikTok. Or you're in a situation where Michael is a little buff. Or if you're facing off against one of the 3 strengthers like Wendy, Michael can get to 3, John can get to 3 rather easily, and just about anything can get to 3 with Wendy on the board already, including TikTok can get up to 6 as well. Lost Boys can get up to 5, so they can be useful as well. But these guys are buff, and they are very useful to use against TikTok, and obviously their strength is really big, so it's good to slap one normally at the Jolly Roger to just already get halfway there to Peter Pan. Peter Pan is 8 strength base, and Pirate Brood is half of that on its own. There are 2 copies, so technically you could win the game with 2 Pirate Brutes to vanquish Peter Pan if there's nothing attached to him, if he's the only thing on the board. Very strong, very expensive, and honestly, a good pairing as well with Worthy Opponent. If you're having trouble money-wise, this card is useful to get money quick, and to kind of get your cash flow in a lot easier and be in a good standpoint as far as power goes. So that way you can spend it on more things like the Pirate Brutes and the 2-cost allies like the boarding parties and Mr. Smee. So Mr. Smee, 2-coster. There's only one of him, obviously. His ability is that when he is played to the Jolly Roger, he gets a buff of +2 strength, a buff of 2 strength while he's at the Jolly Roger. So that's unique to Smee. If you play him to the Jolly Roger, he is a 4 strength ally instead of 2. If you play him anywhere else, he is just 2. If you're in a pinch and you need something to vanquish a hero, whether they are covering important spots or they are taunted, and you got Smee in your hand and you're able to use him in a situation to get rid of a hero immediately, use him. But he's also very useful in the sense to be used to actually vanquish Peter Pan when he is at the Jolly Roger because of his ability, giving him an added 2 strength while he's at the Jolly Roger. That's Mr. Smee. I forgot my count. Again, Swashbuckler, 3 copies, 2 strength, 6. Boarding Party, 3 copies, 2 strength each. That is 6, so we're at 12. Pirate Brutes, 4 strength, 2 copies. That is 8. We are at 20 strength of allies. Mr. Smee, 24 when he's at the Jolly Roger, 22 when he's anywhere else, 22, 24. Now we're at Mr. Starkey. We already kind of went over him a little bit. He can be used, obviously, to be played to a hero's location to move them to an adjacent location. Obviously, first thought is to be used to move Peter Pan over a space. But he can also be useful to move other heroes. So, like, let's say you've got a hero covering Mermaid Lagoon, like the Lost Boys, or TikTok, let's say. He can be useful to say, hey, I'm going to go to the Jolly Roger and just play Mr. Starkey and move TikTok out of the way. So that way I can get this spot open now and get access to these actions, the second play a card and then move an ally or item. Or if he's at Skull Rock and you need him here, you can play Mr. Starkey and move TikTok to an adjacent location to get access back to these locations. Yeah, there's Mr. Starkey. He has 2 strength. So that is total, I believe, 24 or 26 strength, depending on where Mr. Smee is, of allies. 10 in total. 3 Swashbucklers, 3 boarding parties, 2 Pirate Brutes, Mr. Starkey, Mr. Smee. That's a lot of strength, a lot of power going towards all these pesky heroes. Mind you, says 24, 26 strength. Total strength for heroes, 5, 4, 13, 15, 17, 18-ish, arguably. 21, 29. So about 29 to like 33-ish, right? Did I count that right?
Let's see. All right, we're doing math here. 3, 2, 5, 7, 9, 13, 18. 18 plus 8 is...
Oh, 26.
Yeah, 26. So 26,
Sorry,
assuming that Michael's going to be 2 by base and Wendy's not affecting anybody.
Yeah. And then obviously 26 strength. The dusts add, like
6
32.
total, yeah, so it makes it 32.
Yeah.
So there's about
Yes,
32 strength worth of stuff that can happen.
Yeah, anywhere from like 32 to like, I would say maybe 39 or 40, depending on the situation. But yeah, got a lot of allies here that can vanquish a lot of the heroes. But yeah, those are the allies. We're going to talk really quick about things that can buff up the allies. So I'm going to go really quick into Captain Hook's third effect, which is this card, Aye, Sir. Cost 1. There are 2 copies. What this card does is essentially when you play it, it's an effect. So it's not. So it's a card. So it's a card that only lasts for a turn. Let's say, in this case, for the card, only lasts a turn. It's not a card that stays on the board. But when you play it, you choose an ally and you move it to an adjacent unlocked location. And that ally gets +2 strength until the end of your turn or the end of the turn. So let's say I've got my Swashbuckler here. And I've got a Swashbuckler here. And let's say I've got a boarding party here as well. And let's say Pan is already at the Jolly Roger. Let's just say for all intensive purposes, I have 1 power. And Pan is still only at 8 strength with nothing, no dusts or anything on the board or no taunts that can affect him. So if we come over to the Jolly Roger, we can play this card, Aye, Sir. To move an ally to an adjacent location, we're going to choose a Swashbuckler. They're going to get a buff of 2 strength. So now they're 4 strength instead of 2, which is printed on the card. And now we have enough strength to defeat Peter Pan because we have 4 with the Swashbuckler we moved with Aye, Sir. 2 with the Swashbuckler that stayed at the Jolly Roger, and 2 at the boarding party that was at Skull Rock. So now that's 8 strength to put towards Pan, and then we can vanquish him in that turn. It's a good way to sneak out a win if you're low on allies, but you've got cards like this to be able to help you out. Also, even if you're at Mermaid Lagoon, let's say with one of the cannons, and you can do it from here. You can even like move a Swashbuckler over and like play 2 Aye, Sirs or something crazy like that and move the boarding party twice and they get buffed even more. Or you can move the Swashbuckler twice. Some hokey stuff like that, and they'll get a buff of 4 instead of 2 because you had 2 copies of it in your hand and the cannon there as well to vanquish Pan. Also, don't forget to keep in mind that if we're at the Jolly Roger and TikTok is there, we have to discard our hand before we do anything. So cards like Aye Sir will not be able to be played in this situation because our hand will be gone. So in this situation, you would need to make sure you have enough strength to defeat Pan at the Jolly Roger, towards the Jolly Roger, if you want to vanquish him from the ship. But yeah, it's basically Aye Sir. It can be used very well to sneak out a win and vanquish Peter Pan faster, or it can be used to vanquish heroes quicker as well. If you're in a situation where you want to vanquish a hero and you got Aye Sir and you're at a spot with a cannon, or you're at the Jolly Roger, you can move over an ally really big, and now you got 6 to 5 on TikTok. Kind of speaks for itself there. That is Aye Sir. That is one of the cards that allows that gives allies buffs. The other one, really simple, a Cutlass. There are 2 Cutlasses in the deck. It looks almost just like the Scimitar in Jafar's deck, except it's night and not day, I think. And they're on a ship, but the sword looks pretty much the same. But these cards cost 1 as opposed to the Scimitars costing 0. But the Cutlasses actually grant the ally that gets the sword +2 strength for as long as the Cutlass is attached to them. So if I got an ally out with a Cutlass on, that Cutlass stays on them, for the rest of the game or until they're discarded, either by way of Vanquish or by way of Tinkerbell. If she's used to discard an ally, the item would go too. Or the Cutlass can be discarded with Splitting Headache, and the Cutlass can be taken out because it is an item in the realm. In this case, only the item would go and not the ally. So the ally would just lose the sword in that case. But yeah, those are the Cutlasses. You can put them on any of the allies, the Swashbucklers, the boarding parties, to get them 4 strength towards these 3 locations as opposed to 2. You can put them on the Pirate Brutes to get them to 6 strength. And you could even do something really hokey and give 1 single Pirate Brute 2 Cutlasses and vanquish Peter Pan with just a Pirate Brute in the situation if you were able, by way of the Cutlasses or even by way of the Aye Sirs as well. Those can be used in tandem, Cutlass and Aye Sir, to make Peter Pan vanquished by just a singular ally as opposed to multiple. So yeah, those are the buffs in the villain deck that buff the allies. The Aye Sir for just the 1 turn. The Aye Sir for just that single turn. At the end of the turn, the effect goes away. But the Cutlass for as long as the ally. Now we'll get into more of the other items in the deck. I believe there's only one that I haven't really gone over necessarily, and that is the Hooks Case. So this card, again, it grants an extra action to a location. Essentially what this card is the Case of Hooks. It costs 2 power to play, and the location gain 1 power. So that means if I have this at Mermaid Lagoon, if I have Hooks Case at Mermaid Lagoon, I can gain 4 power from this location. I can gain 3 and then gain 1 from Hooks Case. Same thing with Skull Rock. I can gain 1 from the location and gain 1 from Hooks Case. So I get 2 instead of 1. Hangman's Tree, 3 instead of 2. Gain 2 from location, 1 from Hooks Case. You guys get the gist. But yeah, a pretty good tool, I think, for Hook, especially pretty early, if you want to throw it out there and just see if you can get the money going a little bit earlier, especially if you're not finding these cards to help you gain power earlier. This is a great tool to use to grant more power brewing, I guess you could say. That's a Evil Queen pun. At Skull Rock and Jolly Roger, where those spots only have the gain 1 on top. So those can be covered by heroes, and the Hooks Case can grant you an extra power or grant you a power regardless if there's a hero there in general. Yeah, so those cards can be very useful to give Hook a little bit more moolah to be able to play more cards and more of those cards that cost more. We've already gone over the cannon. They grant the extra Vanquish action, and the Ingenious Device. 1 copy, it grants the extra Movie Hero action. Very useful to move Pan around. We've gone over his Condition Obsession. Again, that is when a hero, the opponent vanquishes a hero with a strength of 4 or more. This obsession can be triggered, and then you reveal cards from the top of your fate deck until you get a hero. Then you can either choose to play or discard that hero. So if it's Peter Pan, play him. If it's not, discard him normally. Or if it's like Tinkerbell, you can play her. If you're looking to keep your allies fresh on the board, that'd be a good reason to play her with Obsession instead of discarding her. Now, the other condition here is Cunning. This condition can actually be extremely useful if it does pop. So the trigger here for Cunning is thus: during their turn, if another player has an ally with a strength of 4 or more in their realm, you may play Cunning. Play an ally from your hand for free. So we're talking our allies like the Shadow Man from Dr. Facilier's realm, both of the Eels, Flotsam and Jetsam, in Ursula's realm, Jasper in Cruella de Vil's realm, Felicia in Radigan's realm. The list kind of just goes on and on. But if at any point there's an ally with a strength of 4 or more, remember to also look out for any items that could be attached to allies as well. Any allies that are base less than 4 but might have an item attached, like the Sheriff of Nottingham. He's 3 strength, but if he has a bow and arrows attached to him, he's 4. This Cunning can be triggered off of that. So in that case, when Cunning is triggered, you play it. You say, hey, I got Cunning because you have an ally with a strength of 4 or more. Now you can play an ally from your hand for free. So we're talking about things like really any ally could be useful here. Any of them, arguably. Smee, the Swashbuckler, the Boarding Party, just to get more strength towards Pan. The Pirate Brute can make a giant swing here as well. Smee can arguably too if you play him to the Jolly Roger. The Pirate Brute and Smee can make big swings here if you can play Cunning, and if Cunning is triggered and you play one of these off of it, because the Pirate Brute is very costly and he's big at the Jolly Roger to be able to vanquish Pan sooner, especially if Pan is already at the Jolly Roger or is really close. But Starkey can actually be a huge swing here as well. If you can catch your opponent slipping with an ally out, and you can catch him in a scenario where if Peter Pan's at Skull Rock and they got an ally there, and your opponent has an ally with a strength of 4 and more, Starkey Cunning can be triggered. Starkey can be played because of it. Now Peter Pan is at the Jolly Roger, and you didn't even have to play him on your turn. Now you're in a situation where you can win if you've got the tools necessary to do so. Just because your opponent had an ally with a strength of 4 or more. Yeah, so those are big things I think to look out for, especially with that condition. Be on the lookout for those allies that are in the realm, in your opponent's realm, that have a strength of 4 or more. I believe the only villain that does not have allies that can actually get up to 4 strength is Pete. And Cincinnati's pointed that out in the chat. I believe he is the only one. He's the only villain in this game that does not have allies.
I believe so. That is correct. I believe
so. So big counter pick there, guys. Pete.
Pete's the hidden counter.
But those are basically kind of like the tools of the trade, I guess you can say, of Captain Hook. I guess I can kind of start to go into really basic strategy. As Hook, firstly, as Hook, I guess you could say, like as the player.
Show us the cool tricks, because I've seen you do lots of cool tricks that I think a lot of people just forget about when playing this character. Because I think, as someone who kind of picked him up a few months ago just to play a few rounds with him in casual play, I think there's a lot of things that you just kind of forget about. But once you kind of pick them up, I think this is where when I say Hook is the best character in the game, when you know how to do these things, he's golden. I think he's a dream come true. He literally can do anything possible. You just have to be aware of these things, and I'll let Brian take it away.
Yeah. All right. So we'll get into the really cool, fun strats first, stuff that show your friends. But obviously, these are extremely situational. These are very situational situations. I'm so bad at. Yeah. all of these strategies are situational. So do not depend on them, is what I'm going to say. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, especially in 1v1 play, from what I've noticed. So, first big thing, we'll just talk base. So let's say you got Peter Pan out on the board. Let's say your board is now set up like this. You've got a cannon at Hangman's Tree, and you've got the Ingenious Device at Hangman's Tree. And let's say you've got a Pirate Brute, Smee, a Swashbuckler, and a boarding party. Like let's just say you've got that out. You've got 12 strength towards the Jolly Roger. And you've got Mr. Starkey in your hand. So this is a one turn win scenario. So let's say the turn cycle is already over for your opponent, and it's your turn now. So you're going to come to Hangman's Tree, move Peter Pan once with the move action at Hangman's Tree. Move him again with the move action from the Ingenious Device. You have your one play a card there at the bottom of Hangman's Tree. You play Mr. Starkey at Skull Rock. Because of his ability, you can move a hero from his location to an adjacent unlocked location. Obviously, we want to move Peter Pan to the left here as opposed to the right. So now we have successfully moved Peter Pan from Hangman's Tree to the Jolly Roger in one turn. That is an achievement within itself. Is just moving him over there in general in one turn cycle. If you have the cannon here, now you can vanquish him straight out. Because now you have 12 strength towards the Jolly Roger. This, of course, if you got faded beforehand and a dust went on him, let's say even Wendy is on the board, you still win here. Because this is 11 to 12. Pirate Brute 4, Smee 4, Swashbuckler 2, Boarding Party 2. That's 12. Mr. Starkey does not count because he's not at the Jolly Roger. Yeah, that's kind of a big thing too there. A one-turn win scenario. Again, don't count on it, but if it happens, it's really cool. It's really fun to watch. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to watch happen.
I've seen it happen once. It was great.
I think I've done it once.
I think that was the one time I saw it.
Play.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to get to. Again, don't depend on it, but it's super swag and super neat. Your friends will love you. Okay. Obviously, I showed off the one turn. Big thing, like the one turn move. Obviously, like saying, "Oh, hey, we got the one turn move here," by just having the device anyway and playing Starkey. That's a one turn move there. Yeah, so that's the quickest way you can do it. Some 2-turn wins. Obviously, if you do this, your next turn you got a cannon. You play a cannon to Mermaid Lagoon or something, or you can just outright go to the Jolly Roger and vanquish him from here if nothing gets played that hinders you. That's another thing, key thing as well with Hook, is that typically you want to be on the lookout for the cards that can hinder you. And we'll get into that in a little bit more, but I'm just trying to show off cool strats. So that's that. That's an example of a two-turn win, 1 turn, 2 turn. Let's see. What else can we pull off?
I think the power of this thing. I think that's what you should, because that kind of goes into what you just showed off with the swag play, because that's super cool. But like, even though you might not pull that off all the time, I think just the Mermaid Lagoon location in general with all that stuff is super important to talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. So let's see what we got here. So obviously, let's say we already got the map out. It's already unlocked. We've played. So we've already played the. Let's think if for some reason. Okay, let's think if for some reason we're here, right? So let's say we're gonna move Pan over twice, right? And then that's really all we can do. And like we don't have Starkey yet. And like we're just gonna play a card. We're just gonna play Smee. And then that's gonna be the turn, right? Let's say I've got a cannon here at Mermaid Lagoon, right? Okay, let's say we get faded. And let's say it is a Lost Boys. And the Lost Boys are going to be the only hero that get put here at Mermaid Lagoon. Okay, so now we are in a situation now where our move an item or ally action is blocked and our second card play is blocked. But let's say you've either been holding on to Mr. Starkey or you just drew him. So if I come over to Mermaid Lagoon, I can gain 3. Use my 1 card play to play Mr. Starkey to Mermaid Lagoon, actually. I'm going to move the Lost Boys. You can either move them to Skull Rock or Hangman's Tree. I would move them to Skull Rock just to be safe. But now you've just gotten your move an ally or item action back from moving the Lost Boys. So I'm going to move the Ingenious Device over from Hangman's Tree, move Peter Pan, and I've got my cannon here from Mermaid Lagoon. Now I can vanquish him. 4, 8, 10. That's plenty. That's an example of getting heroes out of the way from, if there's a hero here covering, you can get them out of the way with Mr. Starkey, or you can even get them out of the way with the Ingenious Device. If you've played the Ingenious Device here and you're able to move them out like that. Another cool thing to do as well is if you don't have enough allies to cover Peter Pan, the move an item or ally can be used to move an item or obviously. But let's say you've got a Pirate Brute all the way over here. Now you can move, let's say you've had the Ingenious Device, you can move the Lost Boys over. Right? That's one play. Peter Pan's already at the ship, so he's just sitting there waiting. I already got my Pirate Brute here. Or he's staying here. No, you know what? Let's say Peter Pan's here. He's at Skull Rock. 1 card play could be Mr. Starkey. Just move him over. So now Peter Pan is there with Mr. Starkey. I've already got my Pirate Brute here. I've already moved the Lost Boys with the Ingenious Device. All I have left now is another card play and a move an item or ally action. So now, depending on where the game is, if Peter Pan is only at 8 strength, I can just aye sir Starkey over to win. But let's say he has like a couple of dusts on him and like Wendy is out too. Maybe. Or maybe just 1 dust. I don't know. Maybe just 1 dust here. Okay. So now if I have my move an item or ally action still available and a cannon here too, which I forgot about.
Oh, you're good. No worries. I moved it.
We can move the ally over here, the Pirate Brute with a move an ally or an item action, and now we can play aye sir to move the Pirate Brute over. And now the Pirate Brute has gained the +2 buff because of aye sir, and I've essentially moved him 3 spaces. 1 from the move an item or ally, and then 1 with aye sir. And I've given him a buff, so now he's 6. Smee is 4, and the boarding party is 2. So that is 12, and that would be against Peter's 11 because of a dust and Wendy. So pretty good ways to sneak out wins if you're able to keep this spot clear by way of either the Ingenious Device if it's at that location, or by Mr. Starkey if you're able to move a hero out of the way and move the device over, or move a cannon over, or move an ally over from far away and then get a big strength buff as well. The aye sir can also be used on boarding parties as well. So if you move them over here, obviously they're reachable. But if you have a boarding party here and you use aye sir to move him, now you've got 4 strength towards the ship, Skull Rock, and Mermaid Lagoon because of aye sir, and he still attacks from adjacent locations. That's very big as well for the boarding party too, especially because of their ability is very good. So those are kind of examples that, just kind of like quick examples that I can think of off the top of my can be used.
Honestly, and that's like, you know, and you've made me realize, you know, at first when I was looking at Hook, I thought aye sir was a completely bogus card. I honestly think the biggest thing with Hook, just playing against you for all these months and like watching you play against other people too, is this action right here is in combination with the aye sir is like one of the most important things with him. Especially because he's only got 3 locations to start, and then once he gets that 4th location open, you're going to want to be moving Pan. You're going to want to be moving those allies around because, and obviously I know we'll probably talk about placement of heroes and stuff, opponents are going to catch on to play heroes to the farthest location over and then taunt them. Let's just make this example over here. Because if you're going to be stacking stuff over here to try to kill Peter Pan as soon as possible. So if you can do things like move the boarding party over with Aye, sir, or you already have like Mr. Starkey and you do the move action to move over here, play an ally, kill them, stuff like that. Or if you got the cannon on one of these two locations, just being able to move that stuff around, I think is super important. I think that makes Mermaid Lagoon a super valuable location.
It does.
And that is something I super have picked up on just watching you play, that like this whole location is scary because there's been plenty of times that even recently we've been playing where you have a cannon and you have like heroes and stuff out, but I have to choose like between a bunch of fate cards and stuff. And I'm immediately thinking, all right, does he have a pirate root in hand? Is there a cannon? Can, immediately move this over, especially if you have a cannon here as well as over here. If you get that stupid splitting headache, like you remove one cannon, and let's say you were here just for example purposes. Like, guess what? You can still move over here, move the cannon over. Guess what? If Peter's already over there with this or minus the taunt, guess what? Dead. Got enough stuff
Yeah.
over there to take care of it. I think that move action is super undervalued, even by myself when I first was going up against this character. Don't underestimate that. I think that's this one tool on its own right makes Hook incredibly good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It definitely does. Let's see. Another like quick tip, obviously with Hook, that I can give for anyone that's looking to play him or learn more about him. Sometimes you have to play your own game. There could be plenty of situations where you're playing against somebody that fates you like crazy to where they're not afraid of ever drawing Peter Pan, let's say. Right? And they're just going mad. They're just like, "Yep, fate. Oh, great. Tinkerbell. Great. Okay. Oh, fate again next turn. Oh, great. John. Okay, great." But then there are going to be opponents that just don't fate you, really at all, that kind of are hesitant. Normally with that, I try to feel the room. I mean, I use that term like read the room or feel the room. Kind of feel how your opponent is playing. If they're kind of playing a little fate heavy, um, then the give them a scare where the opponent cards are a little bit less valued, but that doesn't mean you should discard them outright because your opponent could catch on that you're just getting rid of them and depending on them. Now, if your opponent is not fading you at all, you have to keep these cards. You have to play these cards. You have to. That's the only way you're going to find Pan. If your opponent's not doing for you, you have to find them yourself. So yeah, just that tip in there, like play your own game. Obviously, play the game. To me, this is just my humble opinion, just kind of from experience. Play under the impression that you're not going to be given any. So keep on to the worthy opponents and to give them a scares. Typically, like I would say that good spots to play things from um, are like worthy opponent from Skull Rock, especially since you're already going to be forcing a hero on the board. It is good for you to have a fate action as well. So that way you can go back to your opponent and then fate them after you've fated yourself, basically. Not only is worthy opponent, kind of going off on worthy opponent here, is it a great tool to use? This is a terrible example. Obviously, just your Wendy top deck there, but it's a great tool to use to get through your fate deck if by some chance there are items and effects all over the top of it. So that way you can really go through and say, hey, I'm getting rid of all these effects and I just hit a hero. Great. But now there are only like 9 cards left in my fate deck because I got through 6 of them as opposed to just like 1, or as opposed to 2 during a fate action, um, give them a scare can obviously be used very well. I used to do this thing where I would play it first, where I would say, I'm going to play this card first. And more often than not, I got 2 items or things that weren't heroes off the rip. I got something like this off the rip, like these 2 at the top. Now, for those of you folks, this is considered a dead draw. This is going to be a dead draw regardless of when it is played. I've done the thing where I've gone and said, "Hey, I'm going to try to fake them out and try to make them think that Peter's up here." So that way they just fate me and get it over with, and they know that they can fate me more. Obviously, this is a fake out, so it's like, "Hey, he's not up here." So keep going. But I would say like 6 times out of 10, your opponent's not going to fate you. So this could be a waste if you keep that on top, because now you have to wait for either obsession to trigger, or you have to play worthy opponent to get rid of these and go through and find Wendy again and say, "Oh, hey, great, I'm going to play Wendy." You know, but essentially that would be just a waste of Give Him a Scare. It just kind of depends on who you're playing, where you're at, and if you think your opponent is going to um, call your bluff or just not care and say, "I'm going to put out Pan anyway," and say, "Great, Pan's on the board, so now I can fate you whenever." But obviously, if you fake them out, that's not going to happen. Obviously, with Give Him a Scare, my rule for me is if it's not Pan, get rid of it, unless it's a dead draw and you're feeling like maybe you can fate the opponent out. But like 65 or 70% of the time, I just throw anything that's not Pan away because it gets you closer. So like, what are these top two are? Yeah, if you give him Gasser and you're getting this, get rid of him. Get rid of them. Yeah. Until it's Pan, just get rid of them. There are only 3 copies in here. So you don't have unlimited copies. And again, you do have to either discard both cards or return them both to the top in any order. So normally it's best to not depend on one card solely, but to mix it up a little bit. So maybe say like, "Hey, right off the rip, like turn 1, I go first. Okay, I got Worthy Opponent in my hand. I'm going to go over here, gain 1, play Worthy Opponent. Now I've got 3 power, and I'm just going to go in here, get a hero. Who is it? Nope, that's an item. Oh, that's Tinkerbell. Okay, great. She's going to go here. Awesome. And let's say you've got like an ally in your hand. Now you've got 3 power and an ally that can just vanquish Peter Pan, or vanquish Tinkerbell. Excuse me, that's not Peter Pan. Vanquish Tinkerbell immediately and just say, "Hey, great." Along with this, after you've played Worthy Opponent to get through your Fate deck, even if it's just a little bit, you've got your discard action. So typically here, what I like to do with discarding, because obviously we're trying to find the map. I sometimes play with the idea that it's always too late, that it's always near the bottom. I play with that awareness in mind. I never try to assume it's going to be somewhere, and I never try to hold on to cards for too long. This means things like the Ingenious Device and Mr. Starkey. Do not be too dependent on these 2 cards. If you're sitting here holding on to these too long, if you get these 2 off the rip starting hand and you're just holding on to them, you're not getting through to your deck fast enough, especially if the map is all the way at the bottom. So one of these has got to go. And there are ways to navigate around it. There are still ways to win. Just because you don't play the device or Starkey, that doesn't mean you lose or anything, obviously. But obviously, you have to keep in mind that you have to find the map. You have to play the map. It doesn't matter. These
Insert the
cards,
SpongeBob meme here.
yeah.
Insert it now.
So, yeah. So like these cards become less important throughout the game if you're not finding the map, because you have to find this. These cards are important after you've gotten the tree unlocked and Peter's on the board. They're good cards, yes, but nothing compares to this, especially if you're turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, and you're not even at the map. Like, you've got to find it to keep going and progressing, especially with keeping in mind that your other Fate action is here as well. So defensively, Hook does not have much defense, or much. He doesn't pose much of a threat to his opponent, Fate wise, because Max, he can only do it every other turn. He doesn't have cards like Grow Giant that grant him an extra action at an adjacent that grant him to do an action at an adjacent location. He only has that one Fate action at Skull Rock until the map is found. So, yeah, I would say number 1, play your own game, and number 2, just find the map. Just get to the map. Obviously, play your own game, play the cards like Give Him a Scare and Worthy Opponent. These are super important for garnering power in the first place. So that way you're able to play more of these cards instead of discarding. So obviously, if you're in a situation where you need to get rid of cards by either discarding or playing, you should be playing Worthy Opponent because it's going to help you gain more power to be able to play more allies. Not only the Swashbucklers, but the 2-cost boarding parties and the 3-cost pirate broods and Smee. These guys, although they don't look expensive on the surface, it all really adds up because Hook can get to an issue where he doesn't have much money. So these Worthy Opponent cards are extremely helpful, especially if you don't want to discard your ally and you want to play them on the board and make sure you get them out and have them be used and useful and things like that. And I guess my third tip, I guess my final tip here. So play your own game, find the map, or like don't be afraid to get to discard for the map. My next tip would be to just be very knowledgeable of the things in your deck. I think this is universal for every villain or anybody playing this game with anybody. Just be very knowledgeable of how much is in your deck. So how many of each ally, how many of each card is exists in the deck. So like Captain Hook, he's got 10 allies, 8 effects, 4 conditions, and 8 items. That'd be 8 items, right? No. Yeah, 8 items.
Yeah,
8 items.
Yeah, it's 8 items.
8 items, 8 effects, 10 allies, 4 conditions.
Math with Brian, everybody.
Yeah, so be very mindful of that. Also be very mindful of what's in your fate deck and what could be coming. So a great tool for this is that after Pan is on the board, and if you've got a couple of heroes on the board already, so let's say you've got Tinkerbell, Pan's already out here. It's time to start using like Give Him a Scare to find those taunts. Because at the end of the day, nothing else really matters. You don't want Taunt out. In this situation, especially even with Tinkerbell on the board, she can slow you down. Now, if there are no heroes on the this is when you start giving them a scare for heroes. You could start looking for heroes and saying, hey, I don't want this hero out. Great. What's next? Oh, I just shuffled again. My bad. Pixie Dust Taunt. Okay, maybe I can get away with having a Pixie Dust on Pan. But again, if you're ever in this situation, it hasn't happened much, but I've seen it happen more recently. This is possible. No items on the board. Force Taunt on Pan. That's possible.
Yeah.
That can happen. Also, it happens automatically with double taunt. It's very, very possible that this can be a thing. Double taunt out, Pan gets taunted. Now, also notice a big thing with taunt too, for players that want to play Hook and for people that are looking for tips against him. There is no specific order when it comes to taunt. So if there are 2 heroes on the board with taunt, they don't have to be defeated in the order that taunt got put onto them. So it's not like hey, I put taunt on the Lost Boys first and then taunt on TikTok second. All Hook needs to worry about is defeating the taunted heroes first in any order. So he doesn't need to defeat the Lost Boys first just because they were the first ones to get taunt put on them. So if you're in this situation with Peter Pan has a taunt on, and another hero does too, you just defeat Pan. You can defeat Pan first, regardless. Yeah. I guess another thing I kind of wanted to go over a little bit. I don't have much experience playing against Hook, but I play a lot of him, and I've seen a lot of people's tendencies and a lot of what people tend to do.
Are you about to
him.
talk about all my god awful moves against you, Brian? Is that what you're about to do?
No, it's not that.
No, it's okay. I'm calling myself out.
So, any type of tip that I could give opponents playing against Hook Number one, I think would be don't be afraid. Quite simply, don't be afraid, especially early. So like, if it's super early and you're like, hey, like I want to just fate you and like get over it and get over with it, and there's still 15 cards in the deck, go ahead and fate him. Like, just go ahead and throw it out. Hey, here's a hero. Great. Even if it's Pan, even if it's early Peter Pan, like turn one, Peter Pan. This is nothing to really worry about because the Neverland map could always be at the bottom. Now, there are such things as godlike RNG where you just get it immediately and it's like, great, I got the map and the device and Starkey and oh my gosh, I'm already there, you know. But that is very unlikely to actually happen. 30 card deck, the map is the thing you're looking for. On top of, you need to get Starkey, but you also need to get 6 more strength. And also, the actual formation of the Fate deck needs to be in the benefit of the Hook player in this situation, right? So, a lot of factors there. In that situation, all the Hook player would do is just discard crazy for this. Play out their allies and maybe play some cannons, but they're going to start trying to get the map because now that Peter Pan is on the board, it is free pickings. It's like, yup, Pixie Dust. Although Pixie Dust can't go on Pan when the tree is locked. So Tinkerbell goes on the board. Maybe there's an ally out. Boom. What's next? Oh, John. Great. Boom. What's next? Let's say John got vanquished. Oh, great. Lost Boys. Boom. Hey, Lost Boys, how's it going? Now Hook has to find a way to get the map out and stuff. So it's very possible. I know I did some training with Cincinnatus, season 1, and I kind of gave him this tip of like maybe play like the 6 card rule, especially if you're playing a really fast character like Maleficent, Dr. Facilier, Evil Queen, Queen of Hearts, or not even a fast character, or if you're in a situation where you find yourself really progressing and like going, like no matter how much Hook is fading you, you're just progressing faster than he is progressing and than he is at stopping you. So typically like a good rule is like 6 cards, I would say. Like, up, I'm kind of done. Maybe I'm like steamrolling now. And then that actually forces Hook to find Peter Pan himself. Given Worthy Opponent is a good card for him, it gains him some money. But again, those are card plays that he'd rather be spending on allies or items, things like the Ingenious Device or the cannons. Things that are worth more his while to defeating Pan. In my defense, I would much rather be in a situation where the opponent pulls out Pan for me than myself, because those are card actions that I like to have instead of playing Worthy Opponent. As good as it is to get power, it's much more beneficial, I think, for Hook to actually have the opponent pull out Pan. But if you can find yourself in a situation where you can force Hook to do it himself, but you're progressing as well, that's good. Don't do that if you're not progressing. I would say don't not fate Hook if you're not progressing, because then Hook can get in a situation where he just starts loading up the board, throwing out the Ingenious Device, like all the items, and it's just like, you know what, I don't care, like just fate me. Like he's like inviting you. Essentially, he's already played the map. He's fating you as well. A big strategy too, I would say, is that if Hook's not getting fated, he's going to fate you. He's going to try to slow you down because he needs to be fated to get Peter Pan out, especially if he's already having trouble finding him as well. So yeah, I would say that would be, don't be afraid. Just fade him. And also, there are good spots where you can fate him as well, I would say. If you're in a situation where the device is already out, and let's say there's already like a hero, not Peter Pan, covering this spot. And like, let's say Starkey is in the discard pile, like Starkey's like out of the loop. If Hook is at Hangman's Tree and you fate him to bring out Pan, this is actually kind of beneficial. Because he has no way of moving Pan his next turn. There's no way Pan moves because Starkey's in the discard. the Ingenious Device is at Hangman's Tree, the Lost Boys are covering it, so that way the move an ally or item action is not accessible, unless he's able to vanquish the Lost Boys with a cannon, what have you. But normally, I think you guys kind of get the point. Those are good spots to, I think, Fate Hook if you're still feeling a little bit more timid. If he has his board set up like this, where the device is gone, and if you already know that Starkey is discarded, which leads me to my next tip: pay attention. That is as simple as it can go. Pay really close attention to what Captain Hook is doing.
Yep.
If he's playing Give Him a Scare, and he looks at the cards, if he puts them back, you need to know that he put them back, especially if that's pan, or if that's, or if like you think it's pan and like you just miss it, and like all of a sudden, or if it's like midway through the game. This would be way more daunting, like midway. If I'm already like set up, if I have the device out, and all of a sudden I give him a scare, and it's like, oh, there's pan. I'm like, let's say they're just a bunch of freaking cards gone. Like, oh, there's pan. I just give him a scare. I'm gonna put these cards back. Guess what? Oh, you weren't paying attention. You're gonna fate me. Oh, but guess what? Splitting Headache can't get rid of the device now, and now pan has to be played. And now, oh my God, pan's all the way over there. Here comes Starkey. You know, like, yeah, pay attention. I would say pay attention to his fate deck when he plays Give Him a Scare, what he does, what he discards, what's in the discard pile, what's in the fate deck discard pile, what's in the villain deck discard pile, stuff like that. But most importantly, off of Give Him a Scare, I would say 100%. You want to pay attention to that. Pay attention to when he plays this. You don't want to miss this at all. Especially if he does put him back and it's dead, and you're like, oh, okay, like I'm like, he's just gonna put him back. Act like these are two cards that. Oh, that's Pixie Dust and Splitting Headache, and there aren't any heroes on the board or items. Great, I just kind of wasted it. You know, like, okay, you know, like I wasn't paying attention. I would have not faded you had I known you put the cards back, type of thing. But yeah, don't be afraid, and definitely pay attention. And I guess the third one would just be keep an eye on your progress as well. If you find us, like kind of what I was alluding to in tip one, if you find yourself that you're getting closer and closer to your goal and pan's still not on the board, you don't have to help him out. If you find yourself progressing very heavily, yeah, and I think that could be obvious to some of our players, but maybe not to all you guys. But yeah, I think those are pretty good tips. I know I saw in the chat, since I said, especially if you set up your engine so your progress can keep going. Once Hook finds pain, you can fade him a ton to find those taunts. Yeah, especially. So like another big thing to pay attention to as well. If there are multiple heroes on the board, taunt is on the table. So you want to be fading to get out taunt. To taunt a hero. Yeah, just especially be on the lookout for that. Because you need to find those other heroes after pan is played. And you need to try to get it to where like Hook can't steamroll. Like he can't just like steamroll you, and just get it to where he's going. So yeah, I would say don't be afraid of fate, because that's typically when the Hook player, or like me, for example, I'm going to start saying, okay, I'm going to start vanquishing some of these heroes because I don't want them to be taunted when Peter gets out. Or like I don't have the Give Him a Scares to play to recycle taunts. And given even this strategy is not good, I think, especially if there's still one taunt left. I know Jonesy can attest to the Acuna cycle.
Yes, I can.
That it always seems like when you get one Acuna out, the next one's automatically on the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the Hook player should play with that in mind, and that it's good to vanquish the other heroes, and not play for a leaning tower of Jolly Roger pizza tower of heroes, and just hope that you can get around that. Especially if you're playing against Jafar, or if you're playing against someone that has easy access to their fate locations and they're able to progress on top of their fate locations. Um, yeah, Jafar or Ursula, triggery as well. But Jafar is always triggers in this matchup. But yeah, so that would kind of be my like. I think that's kind of my dive with Hook. I don't really
I
know.
think that was really good, Brian.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any questions, but if I could talk about like beneficial matchups or like basic counter picks, to Captain Hook, if you're playing and you feel like you can't break him down, obviously take the tips that I gave of, firstly not being afraid, and obviously keeping in mind that if you're progressing really well towards your goal, um, and on top of that, you're able to fate Captain Hook with Pan out to get taunts out, it's even better. But if you're progressing really well, you can actually slow down on the fading. Um, so that way Pan doesn't come out on your end. Because that's typically what I prefer, and I think what a lot of hooks prefer is that the opposing player pulls out Pan instead of themselves. But yeah, I would say basic matchups though, if you're looking for another villain to play against Captain Hook, I think Maleficent is a fantastic counter pick to Captain Hook. Really, just about any of the really fast guys: Maleficent, Queen of Hearts, Doctor Facilier, Evil Queen. I would say I haven't faced Evil Queen in a while, but Maleficent, Queen of Hearts, Doctor Facilier to start out with. Radigan is also really good against him. He does kind of play the same type of game, but he can get there a little bit quicker than Hook can because he has the cards in his deck that allow him to get to things quicker. Um, Maleficent mostly, I know since he knows about this, but she can kind of get into that cycle of where she can just ignore Hook if it gets to that point. Um, but again, it all kind of just depends on RNG and where the cards lie. Um, I think Doctor Facilier is pretty obvious, um, because especially with him not being able to have access to fate very easily, with Skull Rock with Hangman's Tree being locked and not being able to have access to that fate until Hangman's Tree is unlocked. Um, yeah, it can get very difficult for him against the faster characters. So he has to fate wisely and fate timely, especially before Hangman's Tree is unlocked. Another big counter pick against Hook is Jafar. Um, there's a little friend called Deception in Captain Hook's deck. It is, in my opinion, one of the most damaging, or in my opinion, the best condition in the entire game around all the villains except for Yzma, because it is impossible against Yzma.
And Scar
It's probably
to some
and
extent.
Scar.
To some extent.
Yes, to some extent, Scar, and I would argue maybe Hate. To some extent, um, but yeah, Jafar is very, 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 in my opinion, good just base wise against Hook because he has a very good condition that can just always pop off. It's always good to just hold on to it as well because eventually you might get there. Um, like you could be in that situation to get there. Um, to get to that point where two items are on the board so easily, especially with it being two items in the realm, not Hook's items like Ingenious Device and Cannon. It can literally be two Pixie Dusts or a Taunt and Pixie Dust on the board, and Hook doesn't have any of his items out, but that triggers um, Deception, which that allows the top card of a Fate from the Fate pile to be played. Um, that can be very damaging to Hook, especially if he can get bombarded by Fate as well, and just get Fate pounded, with multiple heroes being put out. And then at the end of the day, there are a bunch of taunts and dusts left in the Fate deck: Deception, Dust, Deception, Taunt. On top of that, Manipulation as well is other
Yep.
condition, which means that if the opponent has 3 or more allies in their realm, Jafar can pick a card from his discard pile and play it. That can be a cycle of manipulation, deception. I've seen it before. It is absolutely insane that can be done. On top of that, when deception is played, you have to stop what you're doing, and if it's a hero, it covers actions or something, or if it's taunt, you can't vanquish Peter. You have to wait until deception is resolved. Um, so it gets very difficult against Jafar. Um, Obviously, just because you play deception doesn't mean you win that way. Um, but I feel like he has a very good time against Hook. especially with what Hook wants to do and what Hook wants to accomplish. I see a question here from Will. Hey, Will, you're really good at this game. Okay, yes. You might have covered this, but I joined late. Would you ever put back heroes on Give 'em a Scare to try to set up Obsession to get past, say, TikTok? I would say no, because typically what I've seen in my matches is that normally people will fate me first before they do anything else. Before they go for a vanquish, because obsession is a thing, especially if you're facing off against players that I call it religiously, play this game religiously, or play this game really
The Holy
or
Book
really
of Villainous.
mastered it.
Yes.
Yeah, like guys like Cincinnatus, or you will, or War Chaos, Zach Pinsence. I'm missing so many people. Pikmin B, Lark, just a lot of like the god, like I call it the gods of the game. But normally they would fate first, and depending on what the cards are, if it's something like TikTok and Pan, I would put TikTok Bach on top. But that's even if they decide to fate you after you've played Give 'em a Scare. So that's kind of that idea as well, is that you have to know, number one, is if the person that you are playing is going to fate you after you put the cards back from Give 'em a Scare. Depending on when it is, if it's really early in the game, like if it's like TikTok Pan super early and they happen to vanquish, then yeah, I would probably go for it in that instant, but I wouldn't be looking at it. I would always assume that they're going to fate me first, that they're always going to go to the fate spot and focus on the fate first. Like, get my opponent down. Now I can come back to me and vanquish and do other stuff. But yeah, typically I find myself not necessarily looking out for obsession. I kind of just play it whenever it happens, whether or not I played Give 'em a Scare before. I normally just play it right as it happens, regardless of what happens. I just go in and do it. But if, let's say, I've played Give 'em a Scare and it's some stuff that I don't want, if it's like items or something, I'll probably discard them and then play Obsession still anyway, because Obsession is still really good on the surface. You're able to discard something, even when, let's say, it is before a fate action. If they do vanquish before the fate, you're getting rid of something. So that is good in that instance. If they do vanquish before the fate, and you have something like TikTok, but I necessarily would not count on. If I Give 'em a Scare and I saw TikTok, I'm getting rid. I would always assume a fate is coming first. I hope that makes sense.
I thought that made sense.
Okay. Purple Potato, what matchups does Hook do well in? That is actually that's a really good question. So I would say on the surface, anything where Cunning feels like it's easy, it's pretty accessible. So with Cunning, I would say he does well. He does pretty freaking well against Mother Gothel. He actually does pretty well against Pete. I know Cincinnatus mentioned that. Although I do think that, in my opinion, it has a lot to do with Pete's realm in general. Cincinnatus probably going to message me and tell me why, but we'll see. He does pretty well against Cruella because of the allies. But I guess base-wise, it really just depends on how the game kind of goes and where the player is at. If you kind of take it with the idea, like, I've got to find the map, I think he does really well against just about anybody. It's really kind of up in the air because a lot of what Hook depends on is where the map is, but not only that, but the formation of his fate deck and his villain deck. Because let's say we're in a situation where we're like, okay, I got Give 'em a Scare. I haven't seen many worthy opponents yet. I'm going to play Give 'em a Scare. Great. Okay. Let's say I'm going to over here and like redo the formation just a little. Let's see here. This card up. This card up. This card up. This card up. Okay, let's say I play Give 'em a Scare. It's 2 items. That's going away, right? Or it's going back, and you're going to hope that your opponent fates you. But if you put it back and your opponent doesn't fate you, you kind of wasted it, because now you're going to try to play where you might try to play where the opponent. But let's say you play give him a scare, and you got 2 items, and you discard it. Let's say you got another copy, you give him a scare, and you play it again. Your opponent still hasn't fated you yet. 2 items. That's 2 dead give him a scares, and 4 of the 7 cards that are not heroes that are gone. So now there are only 3 cards that aren't heroes left in the fate deck. And now this depends heavily on formation and like where Pan is and where he could be. If I'm in this situation, I'm going to start playing like worthy opponent and like hope my opponent starts fading me to get rid of stuff. If your opponent never fates you and you're like worthy opponent, oh great, I got TikTok. Now what? I either give him a scare. What's this? Lost Boys, Tinkerbell. That's going away. Now let's just get all the other cards out here. And let's see where Pan is. Top. Okay, Pan was top there. But if he was at bottom here, let's say he's down here. And if your opponent never fates you, you are going to have a very, very bad time finding Pan. Because these are 3 heroes up here that are just going to get revealed. And now Pan is all the way at the bottom. So that's kind of why, I don't even know why I got on this topic, but it's about matchups. But Hook playing his own game, he really kind of has to focus on that and not necessarily what his opponent does. If his opponent starts doing things for him, great. But I always go in with the assumption that Peter Pan is at the bottom, like every time. I'm not trying to play around and say like, oh, I'm going to discard worthy opponent or discard all this stuff and play 2, give him mascaras off the rip, and it's 4 items that I don't have. So like it can get bad, and that's why the formation of his fate deck is actually really important, and why actually playing worthy opponent in the first place is very important as well. You shouldn't really be looking over this card. I know I used to, and I got kicked in the teeth for it a couple of times. So yeah, typically I would just say on the base, like he has easy times against Mother Gothel, Corella, Pete. Everyone else is just kind of up in the air. But again, I think he does well against just about anybody as long as he's like focusing on his own game and like focusing on getting to the map. If you don't get to the map, you don't win. If you don't get to Pan, you don't win. You have to keep that in mind first before doing really just about anything else. Yeah. Always going with the assumption that things won't be handed to you. Yeah. Since you back in. Since you mentioned about the Pete matchup, it's because of how good Hangman's Tree is. Pete can get stuck in a loop with fates, and Hook is good at closing. Pete has to win quickly against Hook, which isn't really the easiest thing for Pete to do. Very true. Yeah, really true. But again, this all brings up the importance of playing in mind that you want to cover Hangman's Tree after it's unlocked. You want heroes to be here. It doesn't matter where everything else is. Like, honestly, if you're that afraid of that fate, you need to start steamrolling this and hope you can get a taunt. Because at this point, it's impossible to move 3 heroes from here. You would need Starkey to do that. And now all of a sudden, all these, which you probably need more, which you probably still need. So I do definitely understand that and agree that Pete has a hard time with locking it up. With like getting locked, and kind of what you just said, that Hook isn't necessarily quick, but once he finds his important, he can play super. I don't know if that's,
he's consistent. I wouldn't say quick is not the right word, but consistent I think is, because I think that's what this is. If you don't mind if I step in on my little thing about Hook. The reason why he's the best in the game, in my opinion, is how versatile he is, and it's because how efficient he is and how everything that he does is consistent. He's the most consistent character in this game. He has tools that are very on the baseline generic, but they're also incredibly strong. He's got tons of allies. If you're playing it smart, you can, and like, I wouldn't even necessarily have to say smart. If you were just even from the get go, you play your boarding party, you play Smee here. You maybe got where the heck is the Buccaneer man?
Hmm?
Or yeah, even a pirate route. Let's use a pirate route. Like use even at this situation right here, like it's just so consistent. It's really good, and you're absolutely right. You should be discarding for the map, but that's what's really kind of nice is the fact that like if you want to, you're still sort of making progress of doing that by going to Mermaid Lagoon, playing that stuff out to get your board set, and that's not on top of the fact that if your opponent does fate you and they play hero, guess what? John's by defaults too. You can go over here, get rid of John using that boarding party, and guess what? You can just instantly play another one and even discard. Um,
Yeah.
I know you. I know the Jolly Roger is probably his weakest location overall, but like you can still in the early game when you maybe don't have the cannon out, use this as a way to get rid of the crap that's coming your way. Especially like what you showed off with that worthy opponent thing, where you were the opponent, you get that 2-cost hero out, you play it instantly and vanquish it. I mean stuff like that. It's just
Yeah.
incredibly consistent. I honestly think his biggest weakness is his recursion. And for those of you who do not know what that means, essentially his ability to kind of recycle the use of his cards. You bring up that point with like give him a scare where the opponent where essentially like once they're kind of burnt up, they're used. So you have to kind of be careful about how you play them and use them. But you know, if you are chugging through your deck, you're doing this on top of trying to get the map out and everything. You'll be able to recycle your deck to get those back out in no time. And then plus, if you're already playing stuff out, you're gonna already have your deck smaller to get to those cards faster. So, I mean, I just think he's incredibly consistent with that, and I think that's what people should keep in mind too. And obviously, you've covered this incredibly well, Brian. That's why, I just personally, in my opinion, and this is someone who plays a lot of Doctor, a lot of Scar. You know, obviously Scar's not in the top entourage, but Doctor's up there. Doctor's faster than Captain Hook, but he's not as consistent overall. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But that's what, and the thing is, this goes into what we talk about all the time, where it becomes a player mindset thing. Where definitely, you know, you could do like what you said, you just lacing up Jolly Roger, and that's the only place you're doing it. But smart players who are thinking of the move action, knowing when to discard and vanquish and stuff like that. If you are doing all those things, which I've seen Brian play this character plenty of times, Brian does this incredibly consistently. He becomes a threat. It doesn't matter how you're fading him. He is scary. This is the only character I have not figured out how to defeat. And maybe that's why I think he's the best character in the game. But yeah. There you go.
But then, yeah, but then really on top of that, you guys, I know we're saying discard for the map. I'm not trying to undermine his other cards as well because they do hold a lot of importance if they're useful in the moment. Obviously, if they're not useful, find the map. But if you've already got the map out, all of his cards become incredibly useful. Like the Icers, the Cutlasses, all the allies, the cannons. Hook's case even early is really good, just for power gain in general. And then essentially, you know, the worthy opponents kind of die down a little bit. The give him a scare is still kind of shine. But yeah, I mean, just kind of really going on top of that, you know, with this board setup. If this board setup is right here, this can defeat anything that comes on the board. This can defeat anything.
Yeah.
That any hero, like regardless. TikTok from the Jolly Roger, that's these two. TikTok at Mermaid Lagoon, that's these two. Now, given if TikTok is at Skull Rock, something has to be moved. That's the only thing. So in that situation, putting something in the middle is actually probably. But if you put anything here or here, anything is defeatable. Which is kind of crazy for him.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really solid.
Yeah.
Is that it, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it for me. I got to get ready for my match with Tave's wife.
Okay. Well,
gotta put some of this into practice.
I do want to say, Brian, thank you for doing this. You did a fantastic job doing this. This is absolutely fantastic, and I hope that what Brian taught anyone here that's watching this on stream or later on the YouTubes on the VOD. This helps you learn how to play hooky better than I ever will be able to. But yeah, this was absolutely fantastic. I hope this really helps out.